Well, hello, everybody, and welcome in. It's good to see you. My name is Andrew Burkham. I am the founder and CEO of the Idea Training Academy. And it's time for Be Great, our weekly show, our weekly live stream and podcast that's all about how you can be a little bit closer to the great self that you really were born to be. So it's good to see all of you here today. Very, very good. Welcome in Style. Welcome in Mitchie, D. Welcome in Head of Steel. So pleased to see all of you here today. And if you guys will remember, last week we started with some Q&A. And so I'm going to toss this in here into the chat. If you have questions that you'd like to add, you can do so over there. And I will get to them if I can. If not, we'll get to them next week. But we have a couple of questions that we weren't able to get to last week, and so we're going to pick up there this week, and hopefully this will be good for everybody. So we have two questions today that we're going to work on, and they're both pretty high stakes. They're both pretty emotional, like relatable topics. And I think that they are relevant to anybody who is working at growing or leadership or just generally staying focused. And so that's why I kind of titled today's episode with, this is how you keep focused, even when disappointment comes, even when life comes. So let's start off with the first question. And here's the first question. It is this. If you have minor disappointments, how do you stop them from holding you back and stay focused on the bigger picture? So this is a really, really good question because this is one that I think we all deal with all the time. It's one of those kind of it's one of those kind of hidden traps. One of those things that will wear you down over time. That will take that energy and clarity that you have and start to kind of sap that away. And it happens without us even realizing it. There is that moment where all of a sudden we realize, oh, that energy that we had, that excitement that we had to do the work, all of a sudden is gone. And I think this is a part of it because most of us are pretty good at bouncing back from major setbacks. And I know that sounds weird, right? But it's true. When something big comes along, and this is something, it's one of those things where I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were talking about, they were like, oh yeah, it's really easy to, they were talking about trusting God, for example. They're like, oh yeah, it's really easy to trust God when things are going well, but when they're going badly, like we stop believing. And I don't think that's the case, right? Because I think that when we get those major setbacks, we bounce back, right? We find ways to rally and we get the support we need and we recalibrate and we go in, we dig deep, right? Sometimes it takes longer than others, but it's like there's a muscle for it that we've developed for bouncing back from big major setbacks. But the little disappointments are sneakier. They kind of come in very, very quietly. So true. Big setbacks really niggle less. It becomes a memory more than a reminder. I love that. Hey, Jimmy, what's up? It really do be like that, and it's strange. I know. I agree 100%, right? But the minor disappointments they're like I was said, they're kind of sneaky, right? They kind of slip in, and then they start to like stack up, right? Like coagulate is not the word that I mean, but they collect, and all of a sudden you find yourself. You ever wake up and you realize that you're stuck, that you're like I don't know where I'm going. I'm super bitter about everything. I'm super discouraged about everything, and I have no idea why. Have you ever done that? I did that. I'm writing about that actually in my newsletter that comes out today. I don't know. A few weeks back, I was in this place where I'm like, I'm just distracted all the time. And I'm distracted all the time, and I hate everything that I do. All of my work is terrible right now. That sounds like Wednesdays. Fair head of steel. And I was like, what is going on with me? And I think this is a part of it, right? So uh, here's a kind of a picture that I'm working on. Mondays for me. Mondays can be challenging. Every day can be challenging if you let it, right? So minor disappointments, the picture that I'm working on is that they're kind of like sand that gets in your shoe. You ever go to the beach And if you don't have a beach by you, I'm so sorry. But if you've ever been to the beach and you go to the beach and you get sand in your shoe, if you get like 1 grain of sand in your shoe, it's just not hurt. It's not really going to bother you unless you're like hypersensitive to it. But then what happens is over time, right? If you get just even that one little rock in your shoe, eventually it's going to cause some irritation. And if more sand gets into your shoe, that's going to slow you down, right? And over time, it'll even stop you from moving forward at all. So we have to fight against the stacking up of these little disappointments in our lives. That's one of the things that we have to do. So the question is, what do we do when this happens? What do we do? How do we deal with these? That's what this person actually asked. And so here is I wrote down 4 steps. Here are 4 steps that I would recommend you use when you start to get into this disappointment, this little minor disappointment thing. The first one is you just have to name it, right? You have to call it out. Naming things is really, really powerful. Like that's an ancient thing, but it's true. Naming things is really powerful. But when it comes to these things, these little disappointments, these little setbacks that we have in our lives, you cannot let it stay vague, right? Because when we let things stay vague, what happens is we start to I can't stand sand. It gets everywhere and multiplies and haunts you weeks later. I hate sand. It's rough and it's coarse. What's the thing? What's the meme? Um, I agree. I know sand is the worst, right? So step one, dealing with sand or disappointments, more importantly, is that you don't let it stay vague because what happens is when we're just like we just let it go out there and we don't name what is getting to us, it evolves into this feeling that we have. And then that feeling, like we then want to treat the feeling. So you ever do this? You ever like, man, I'm just not feeling right. Oh, I need a drink, or I need some food, or I need whatever your drug of choice is, right? Like whatever your thing is that you use to medicate yourself. I just need X because I feel off, right? And so you do that, and then maybe you feel better for a little while, and then you eventually don't because you realize that it's what's gone against it, right? And that's what you were expecting. Sorry, I'm sorry to sorry to disappoint you, my friend. Uh, although it is a good application. So what you can't do is you don't want to let things get vague, because if you do leave them vague, then what happens is you will start to medicate the feeling. So what you have to do is you have to name that thing. So if you are thrown off, if you're having that feeling, then what I want you to ask yourself is, what was I expecting here? Like what here did not go the way that I hoped? And that's driving you towards clarity because your power is always in clarity, whether it's personally, whether it's in leadership, whether it's organizational, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your faith. It doesn't matter what it is. Your power is in clarity, right? Even when you don't have the ability to change anything else, clarity gives you power you need. And we know that taking control over the things that we can control is the way to fight overthinking, right? So we want to fight overthinking. So we want to drive for clarity. So ask yourself, what was I expecting here and what did not go the way that I hoped it would? So for me, right, a few weeks back, it was, you know what, I was going to launch this group coaching program in June, and nobody signed up for it. Basically, the long and the short is nobody was interested in this product that I created, and so I kind of let that drag on me a little bit. And when I realized, okay, that's it, like I was able to name it. Okay, I'm disappointed because I put a product out that nobody wanted, right? Okay, step one, felt. Actually saying it out loud is surprising as well, almost like validation. If you're speaking to yourself, kind of makes it real. If that, it makes perfect sense, Style. That's one of the things. I was listening to a podcast the other day on my way to a meeting, and this researcher was talking about anxiety and ways you can deal with anxiety. And she said that, the way to deal with anxiety is actually, we know this, it's actually to drive towards creativity, but there's a step in between. You can't just be like, okay, I've got anxiety and now I'm going to paint a picture and everything will be better. No, there's a step in between, and the step in between is kindness. And so it's learning to treat that anxious part of yourself with kindness and not with the kind of judgment or harsh reproach, right? And she said two things. She said, number one, she said, put your hand on your chest. She said, because that action right there, just having that, putting that pressure on your chest, that actually invokes like a feeling of comfort, like a feeling of someone taking care of you. So try that. Put your hand on your chest. And then she said the other thing is you need to speak to yourself the way you would speak to like a frightened animal, right? If you think of, if you had a puppy that was scared of the lightning and thunder, like the way that you would talk to that frightened animal or a child or someone who was afraid, talk to yourself that way because hearing that tone out loud will help drive you towards it. So that's exactly right. I think we listened to the same podcast. Did we, Mitch? I don't even remember what it was now. Something you should know. I think it was on. Yeah, I listened to it yesterday, but really, really good lesson. But the same works for this. Talk to yourself. Tell yourself you're disappointed because nobody wanted to buy your thing, Andrew. That's me talking to myself. Step two. Okay, so first name it. And then step two, you've got to start to shrink it, like shrink its power, basically. And a lot of times we will try to do this by ignoring things. Like we think that we are going to shrink the power of things in our lives by ignoring them. And that is not it. That's not what it's about. What you have to do is you have to learn to put things in their right places. So this requires you to kind of categorize things in your life. So listen, here's the thing. This happened. It was not ideal. It was not great. Maybe I didn't show up the way that I wanted to, right? Or maybe just the outcome wasn't what I wanted it to be, right? But does it define me? So am I defined by that? So I could say yes, right? And I could let that failure into my identity. So I threw it out there. I had this group coaching program. It was priced at a super low price point. I thought it would be great for people who are interested in getting into coaching, but like didn't really want to spend the money that it takes to become a coaching client. So I'm like, okay, low price point, easy barrier of entry. It's a group program, so like it's super super safe. Not much required there. Like one call a week for 4 weeks. So I thought this would be something that people would want. It wasn't something that they wanted. So I could take that into my identity and I could go, people don't want what I have to offer. They don't want my advice. They don't want they don't want my expertise, all of the certification that I work for, all of those things. Like they don't want that. That's all been a waste. I could make that into my identity, but I can't do that, right? Because it doesn't define me. I didn't have the right approach, but that doesn't mean I don't have value to offer. I don't have value to add to people's lives. Does it derail the mission, right? Am I just done as a coach because this particular coaching program it didn't fly? No, of course not. Right? Of course not. I still have clients. I'm still working with people. I'm still adding. I'm still adding value every single day, and I will not stop doing that until I die. Right? And if not, so if it doesn't define you, if you can honestly tell yourself this failure does not define me, and this failure did not completely blow up my mission, if you can honestly say those things, then stop letting it rent space in your head. You know what I mean? Like, call yourself out, challenge yourself. Because I'm going to challenge you every single week. That's part of what I do. It's part of why I do this. I know there's only 7 of you right now, ish of you right now. So, it's not a big crowd, but you come here in part, at least, because you know that you did something and you knows that you need to be challenged. So I will challenge you every single week. That's my commitment to you. But you also have to start to challenge yourself. The A in idea back there is accountability. And what I always say is accountability starts with other people, but it's not complete until until you become accountable to yourself. So you have to start to challenge yourself. Did this define me? Did it derail my mission? If not, stop letting it live in your head, right? Stop going over and over and over it again. So step 3. Go to the steps. Step 1, name it. Step 2, shrink its power, right? Step 3, you got to kind of get a bigger view. So zoom out a little bit. Because when we get disappointed, what happens is our world narrows. It like we start to get this laser focus. Don't we do that? When when you start to get I intended to lurk and I appreciated the reminder to not let feelers define me. Ah, good. Thank you. I appreciate the lurking, though, Jimmy. I do. um, so when you get this kind of tunnel vision, when you get disappointed, you get this kind of tunnel vision. And what you have to do is you have to really fight to regain perspective. I am really bad at this naturally. Um, I blow things way out of proportion, right? And what you have to ask yourself is, what is the bigger mission here, right? Because it's like it's like a movie, right? So if it's a movie and this is a scene in the movie, like this failure, this disappointment that we're experiencing, is this just a like a plot twist? Or is it just like a moment in a montage someplace, right? Like that, maybe this is a terrible metaphor, I don't know, I'm making it up as I go along. Is it like just a moment like where all of the things are happening and Rocky's lifting the weights and boxing the thing and then he stumbles and falls, right? It's just a scene in the montage. Or is it like an actual plot moment, right? Is it when you get knocked down and out? Because if it's not a knocked down moment, then just move on to the next part of the montage, right? When you have tunnel vision, you might miss moments of positivity. That's exactly right. Because again, when we get that laser focus on our moment of disappointment, we don't see all of the things in the periphery. That's one of the things that causes us problems. Like when you're teaching somebody to drive, one of the hardest things to do when you're teaching somebody to drive is to remind them to use their peripheral vision. God gave that to you for a reason, right? But we always want to look at the thing that's in front of us, and it's important to look at the thing that's in front of us. But there are all of these things. There are all of these ripple effects that are happening in the world as you are acting throughout it. And sometimes you've got that moment where like the thing doesn't go, or it doesn't work, or something's just not quite right about it, and you get disappointed. But over here, maybe you made a connection with somebody that is a connection you wouldn't have had before, right? Maybe that one person who signed up for that coaching program, maybe that person and maybe there's a relationship that I need to explore there, right? Maybe there's something they need that I can give them, and can tarnish the good things, dulling the shine of life. Exactly, right? And if you start to miss out on all of those possibilities, then you exclude the possibility of positivity. And when you exclude the possibility of positivity, what happens is that all of your life, all of a sudden, is miserable. But it's not. There are so many good things. This is one of the reasons. I know that it's super cliche, but guys, I say it because it works. When we talk about gratitude, right? It's not just about going, oh, today I'm waking up and I'm thankful for things, right? That's not what I'm talking about. It's about like really taking a moment to think about, okay, like what is it that's good in my life? What is good in my life? Right? Where are things going right? Because there are things. You're just not seeing them because you're laser focused. I use the negative as the catalyst for something greater. That's good. Right? We always want to see a setback as a potential. It's a potential for growth. It's a potential for learning. It's a potential for something else, right? So that's exactly the way to phrase it. But what you really have to do is you have to decide, is this something that because it's a failure or a disappointment, is it going to change my life fundamentally? Or is it just a moment that I need to move on from, right? So that is step 3, zoom out. So step 1, name it. Step 2, shrink it. Step 3, zoom out from it. And then step 4 is exactly what Mitch was talking about. You got to channel it, right? Because the secret superpower of disappointment is that it can become fuel. Now it can become weight, right? If we put all of our disappointments on our shoulders and we just stack them up and we try and carry them, then that could be weight. That can make it harder to move. But they can become fuel. They can become a moment where we recommit to what's important for us and when we begin to move with more intention. Because I'll tell you what, a lot of times the reason we find ourselves disappointed, the reason I find myself in this state is because, you know what? I didn't move with the right amount of intention. It's the boppet of positivity. Exactly. That's exactly right. It is the boppet of positivity. Um, so move forward with intention. Like try and dissect, where do I need to be intentional? Where do I need to show up intentionally? Let's go back to my example of the coaching program that flopped here a few weeks ago, right? One of the reasons that it flopped is because I didn't put it out on social media at all. I dropped it in my Substack, which, by the way, please subscribe to my Substack. It's free, and I like to think it's a value add for you. It's just one post per week. I always record them in audio. If you if you don't like reading or if you prefer to listen to it in the car, can we please stop saying flop? So head of steel, I would say flop based on the expected metrics. How about that? That it didn't go the way that I intended, right? So it was a disappointment. So the thing is, like, where was my intention missing? Well, I didn't get the word out. I put it in the Substack. I talked about it in here. But you know what? I have an audience. It's not a giant audience on social media, but I have an audience, and I didn't get it to them. So where was my intention? It was off somewhere else. It wasn't on this program. So, I wasn't treating it with the value. I wasn't treating it with the same degree of value that I was expecting a return from it, right? So where can I move with more intention? Because that's what high performers do. They don't ignore pain, right? They just don't let it become like the main thing in their life. So athletes don't ignore pain, they don't ignore discomfort. They just work through it, right? They just don't let it be the one thing. And they learn to recognize the difference between what is painful and what is uncomfortable, right? Press into the pain. That's right. So what you have to do is, and I wrote about this in my lovely Substack that you should subscribe to a couple weeks ago, but I was talking about how, when my wife does yoga, and one of the things her yoga instructor says is that you have to push into discomfort, but you have to draw back from pain. Because you have to know the difference between the two, right? Pain is something that will actually damage you, but discomfort is something that will actually grow you. And so learning to know the difference between the two is super important. Style has a question. Do you ever question why you're having the feelings of disappointment? Like a real true deep dive on the why. I did that with something the other day, and it helped me realize a bit of the root of the problem, which helped shift the focus of what I wanted to work on myself. That's a really good observation, Style. I think that's a huge part of it, right? Is that you need to do a deep dive onto the why. I almost want to say it's at two levels, right? You want to deep dive into why you're feeling disappointed, right? Like what that goes back to naming it, right? Like, why am I actually feeling this feeling of disappointment? But then also, you want to go back to why you tried whatever the thing was in the first place. Because over there, someplace in that why is your mission. That's your design. That's what you should be doing. And so you've got to deep dive on both of those whys. Why am I feeling this way? And then I could go, okay, well, here is the root, right? Here's the problem. I'm disappointed because of this. Now I can work on this instead of whatever I thought it was, right? But also, why did I get myself into this in the first place? In my case, if we go back to the whole coaching thing I was talking about, right? The point is, I want to help people that don't have thousands of dollars to spend on coaching. That is my mission in life, is to help people and to help as many people as I possibly can. And that's why I got into that. So I need to go back to that why. Like, not just, oh, I tried this thing and it didn't show up the way I wanted it to, but okay, but I'm not done with that. I didn't get that done here, but I can't not get that done because that's my mission. That's what I'm here for, right? That's what I do. So I hope that gives a little bit of an answer. I don't know. Again, these are all anonymous questions. And if you do want to ask questions, did I drop this in the chat? I feel like maybe I didn't. I know. There's that. So if you want to ask additional questions, please toss them in the chat. I've got one more that I'm going to get to, but I hope that provided, for whoever asked that, I hope that provided a little bit of a framework for that. I think that's, and there was some good discussion. People brought, some people brought, some things that I wasn't expecting, and so I appreciate that. This is an opportunity for me to learn too. Selfish motivation. What can I say? So here's a question two. Question two is this: how do you deal with a toxic family member of your spouse that you believe needs to be cut off, but your spouse group therapy? Exactly. I prefer group coaching. Again, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed anything, but I am a coach, and group coaching is really, really good, right? Because we all learn together. That's super good. So, how do you deal with the toxic family member of your spouse that you believe needs to be cut off, but your spouse doesn't see it yet? So this one's loaded, right? This one is I was almost hesitant to get into this one on a stream because this is a heavy one, right? This is one of the hardest spots you could possibly be in emotionally. Because you're not just managing a relationship with this person that you think needs to be cut off. You're also managing your spouse's emotional connection with them. So now you're all of a sudden you're managing like your relationship with this person, but now you're also like managing your relationship with your spouse through this person. I've watched friends deal with this. So this is not an easy one. So let's break it down a little bit. I took lots of notes. I did not want to misspeak on this. Again, I'm giving you a caveat. I've got a pretty good relationship. Our relationship's lasted a long time. I'm pretty lucky. Her family's pretty good. My family's pretty good. We all have, moments where they irritate us, right? But we don't have anybody that necessarily needs to go right out the door. But we have had people in our life that we did need to exit the room. And so let me break this down for you a little bit. Here's what I have. So again, the caveat is I'm not a licensed anything, but I know what love is. So let's get into it. So the first one is, it is important for you when you are looking at someone and trying to determine if they are someone who needs to be on the next leg of your journey with you. The first thing you want to do is you want to focus on patterns and not moments, right? Because what we have a tendency to do is we will recount every single wrong thing a person has ever done, right? And we'll go like, "Oh, you did this to me yesterday, and then you did this last month, and you did this." And then, and then we start to just stack up all of the various things, like every single wrong thing. But what that does is that creates a cloud, and we don't see through to what we really need to address. And what we really need to address are repeated behaviors that are violating boundaries, or that are creating instability, right? In your relationship, especially your relationship with your spouse, which is very, very, very important. Probably the most important relationship that you can possibly have, right? So you want to look for those repeated behaviors that are violating those boundaries or creating that level of instability, or that are actually causing harm. Because let's be real, right? Some behaviors actually are causing harm. Now, just like pain and discomfort, it's really important that we recognize there's a difference between behaviors that bother me and behaviors that are actually causing harm, that are actually toxic. We live in a culture where we like to label everything that we don't like toxic, and everyone that we don't like is a narcissist. That's not true, right? So we've got to know the difference. So what you're looking for are repeated behaviors that are violating those things. And what this does is when you're having that conversation, that hard conversation with your spouse, it lets you anchor that conversation in patterns. Because if you're not anchoring it in patterns, then what are you going to anchor it in? Well, we all know we're going to anchor it in personal attacks, right? We're gonna just start talking about how bad that person is, or how toxic, or how narcissistic, or you fill in the word of the week, right? The pop psychology word of the week that we're using for people we don't like. So anchor it in things that are observable and things that are patterns. That's the first one. So focus on patterns, not on moments. Step number 2 is this: don't make your spouse choose. This is the worst possible thing that you can do, and I see people do it. It is, well, you know what? It's them or me, right? Because here's the thing. Here's why that doesn't work, right? And maybe it comes to that, right? Maybe there's a point at where it comes to that. But the issue is, if that's the first conversation that you're having, then it's too late. You have failed in your part if that's the first conversation that it comes to, right? Because it's up to you to, to express your feelings before it gets to it's them or me. Because we know what happens when we're presented with a binary choice, them or me, our defenses go up, right? And we lose the ability to listen. And so communication breaks down, our defenses are up, we get defensive. So you're like, so Andrew, so what do I do then, right? If it's there's a super toxic person and I got to deal with them, like what do I do if I can't go it's them or it's me? Do this. Like, start with how it affects you, not just what the other person is doing, right? So I know, and again, yeah, please understand, I'm not a therapist of any kind, but I statements are a thing, right? So when this happens, here's how I feel, right? Or like, hey, when we're in these environments, when we go around these people, I'm starting to feel unsafe. And here's why I think that is. Or I don't feel supported. When your mom comes over and she says this thing about about the kids, and you don't say anything, like, I'm feeling unsupported in that, right? So you want to start the conversation from how it affects you, not from, hey, you need to choose between that person or me, right? So step 3, right? So step 1 is focus on patterns. Step 2 is don't make it a choice right up front. Step 3 is you have to clarify your personal boundaries. I hate the word boundaries, but I couldn't think of a better one. Boundaries, we get so precious about boundaries. Oh, you're violating my boundaries, right? It's really not most of the time. Really, most of the time we're violating your preferences. But sometimes there are boundaries when you're like, hey, guess what? Like, I'm not actually comfortable going to that place, or I need to take a step back from this relationship at this moment. Because here's the thing, like, those are your personal boundaries. You cannot set boundaries for your spouse. I know, I know, I know, I know. I'm getting myself into really deep water here, but guys, listen, here's the thing. Like, perimeters, maybe parameters, possibly. I don't know. Um, you can only set boundaries for yourself. Can't set boundaries for other people. Can't do it. So, and the other thing is, you don't have to wait for your spouse or anybody else to fully agree in order to honor your own boundaries. So you will get what you expect. So if you don't hold firm to those things that are important to you, you cannot expect anybody else to respect them. So you've got to figure out what actually is a boundary and what's just an annoyance. And you have to make that clear. You got to clarify it. And then you've got to stick to it, right? Emotional attachment also plays a role. I personally struggle with that. Sure, of course. I mean, at the heart of all of this is emotional attachment. So the question, whoever asked the question was asking the question about, like, what do you do about a spouse's family member that needs to be cut off? Like, that's already a really hard question because, of course, you're emotionally attached to that person. Like, we are emotionally attached to our families, even when they're abusive, even when they're not good for us. There's still an attachment there that we really can't explain. So that's hard. So that's why, you got to clarify those personal boundaries, right? And you have to be aware that when you're talking with the other person, they're not there yet. It may take them a while to get there. And then the next step 4, is like, play the long game. That sounds like you're being manipulative. That's how I wrote it down, but that's not how I want to say it. It's more, keep the long view, I guess would be it. Like, have far sight on it. Because just like we said, because of the emotional attachment, because of the, possible, like, feelings that are going on, and how it can become, a thing where it's them or me and their defenses that are up and all of those things. Because of all of that, it's got to be a slow conversation and it's got to be intentional, right? You cannot just wake up one day and go down to breakfast and say, "Hey, your mom can't come over to the house anymore." That it can't be that conversation, right? That's not going to work. It's got to be slow, it's got to be intentional. Because when we have those conversations, when you have those flashpoint conversations, like, okay, I've had enough, we've got to talk about this, right? What's going on then, right, is that now you're trying to win an argument. Because when you put the other person on the defensive, then you've created an argument. Now you're trying to win an argument. And you're trying to win it in one sitting, right? But that's not what you're actually doing. What you're actually doing is you're trying to preserve what's most important in your marriage, or what's most important that is your marriage, by the way. And incidentally, um, I don't want to. I don't want to sound judgmental, but I also don't want to draw back from this. And it is this: if your marriage is not the most important thing to you, then you're doing marriage wrong. I mean, that's all I can tell you, right? If your marriage is not the most important thing to you, then it's not gonna last. That's all there is to it. It will not last because there is nothing in your life that will require more intention than your partnership with that person that you are committed to. And that's why so many marriages fail, is because that commitment never really solidifies in the first place. Something else becomes more important than that. So you got to keep focused. And in this case, right, when I say keep that long, that long view, it's because what you're trying to preserve that most important thing, but you're also trying to stand up for your own mental health, right? At the same time. And so those two things should be connected, right? But getting there may take more talking than one conversation. So there is a patience, there's a forbearance, is a word that's biblical that I like. But there's a patience that's going to have to come into this, right? It cannot, it will not be resolved at the boiling point. It will only be resolved in the slow conversation. So that's step 4 is keep that, keep that long game, that long view in your mind. And then step 5 is complicated, but something you have to do, and that's you got to invite your spouse into curiosity, right? The cure for anything, for solving any problem, is always to start from a point of curiosity. That's the case in your life. It's the case in business. It's the case in anything else. So, just like if I was coaching somebody, I'm always going to try and ask open-ended questions. And when you're having this conversation with the spouse, that's what I would recommend you do. Is you start with open-ended questions. Have you ever noticed how you feel after we spend time with this person? Or do you think that this behavior that they do would be okay if it was directed at somebody else? Right? So again, like mom comes over, she's like complaining about the way that we handle the kids. Like, do you think if she just went into somebody else's house and said that same thing, that behavior would be okay? Right? Because curiosity, when we have curiosity, what it does is it creates space. It opens things up a little bit, it backs us off, and it opens things up, and it creates this space for truth to emerge without pressure. Because truth never happens at the polls. I've said this a million times, so if you've heard it, I'm sorry, you can turn me off now, but please don't. Uh, but truth doesn't happen at the polls, right? At the I'm right or this person's right or the truth is always in the middle. It's always in the tension. And the only way to get to the tension is to start to become curiosity, because the poles are created out of certainty. And absolute certainty, what do we know from Star Wars? That only a Sith deals in absolutes, right? Well, that's true, right? Anytime somebody is dealing only in absolutes, they're probably trying to sell you something. There's always room for tension in the middle. So curiosity creates space for you to get into that tension, right? Certainty is the death of growth. Thank you. I appreciate that. As he says it as an absolute. Exactly. 100%. 100%. And here's just the last little note that I wrote down for myself is this. The goal is not to control, right? It's not to control the conversation or your spouse or their family member or anything like that. It is to protect, right? So you have to remember that the intention is to protect with integrity. And that means knowing some things, right? That means knowing, it means knowing, what's important, what's most important right now. It means knowing your values, having your family values established. And by the way, if you're not having that conversation, you should be. I know it's weird to like have a family meeting and go, hey, we're going to figure out what our family values are. But I mean, realistically, you need to do that. Because here's the other thing: if you got kids, and I know a lot of you do, and I do certainly, and I've had my successes and my failures with my kids, but I'll tell you this: my failures with my kids have almost always been when I did not communicate the values, the family values correctly to them. And I'm not saying about family values like you have to see everything exactly the same way as me or you're out of the house. It's not that. No, it's when you're talking about communicating values, I'm like, there are things like, we value generosity in our family, right? And generosity can take a lot of different forms. But the bottom line is, in this family, we value generosity. We give more than we take. That's the goal in life, right? And so my failures with my kids have always been moments where I've either failed to express the values to them, or when I haven't lived those values correctly, when I haven't held to the values. So if you have children, please figure out now what your values are and communicate those. My family, once a month growing up, we would have a family meeting and discuss what was important to us and how we were going to achieve that. I think that's great. I mean, I know it sounds corny to a lot of people, but honestly, I think we should all do that, because a family, that's run just by the seat of its pants is not a family that's going to be highly successful in the end. It might be, but there's every bit as much chance that it might not be. And we shouldn't leave our families and the way we raise our kids and the way we treat our spouses, we shouldn't leave those to random chances. And that's why coaching for me is so important. That's why I got into this in the first place. It wasn't because I watched a YouTube video and they're like, "Hey, you could be a coach and make $1 billion and quit your job and all of this." No, that was never the intent. The intent was that I looked at people and I went, I know so many people who have suffered so much hurt in their lives just because they didn't stop to think. They didn't stop to ask the right questions, or they didn't stop to ask any questions. And as a result, they've suffered terribly. And how can I help people with that? Well, I only have one thing, and that's perspective. That's all I've got, right? I've got perspective and I've got experience, and I have a way of seeing things that's different. And so if I can give that to people, then you know what? I can add some value. You can get lost in life. You can get lost in life. That's absolutely right. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. Let's see. So I have another question that I'm not going to get to today because I have 13 minutes left. Let's see. Do I want to jump into this? I'm gonna throw it out there. I'm gonna try and do this in 13 minutes. We'll see. Here's the question. The question is, how do you best explain your emotions without looking like you're going on an accusatory rampage? Selfish desires will ruin a partnership real fast. That's true. That's true. And hi, Emily, by the way. It's good to see you. Selfish desires, and again, like allowing your focus to shift, right? I think that's a big thing. When we say selfish desires, like a lot of times what we're really saying is, um, you began to focus on something that shouldn't have been the focus, right? And I know I've done that, right? You can don't ask Patch, please. But there have been times like when I've gotten focused on my work or on any number of things, right? Above and beyond our family. And it's like, no, I need you. I'm fortunate because I have a wife who will go, we need you here, right? We have family night on Tuesday nights, and I don't get out of that, right? And not that I would want to get out of it. Because we have a lot of fun, and I love my family, and it's super fun. But like every time, I have to schedule something on a Tuesday night, I'll do everything that I can to avoid it because because my family will call me on that. They'll be like, "Hey, stop trying to get a game night. Shut up. I'm not doing it." But they'll call me on that, and they'll go, "Hey, we need you here," right? So much of it is about priority and about being reminded of what's important. and about not letting things that are less important become more important. So that's what I have to say about that. But this question, how do you best explain your emotions without looking like you're going on an accusatory rampage? So I have one very simple answer to this. And it's this: if you're going on an accusatory rampage, um, so it kind of depends, right? If you're explaining your emotions to the person, right, then if you're accusing them, then what you're actually doing is you're telling them about how they're making you feel, right? And notice that I'm being very specific about it's an I feel, not a you make me feel. That's right. So it's like, hey, you're making me feel this way, And so now you can hear the accusation in that. So what you do want to do is you do want to draw back from that. And you want to go, hey, listen, I'm feeling this right now. And here is what I think may be triggering that. But I need to talk about this. Now, the other thing is this: set the conditions up front. Like, just be upfront with the fact that you're feeling a way, and go, hey, I'm gonna say some stuff right now. Now, again, it depends on the relationship. If it's a relationship, like it's a relationship with me and my wife, right? I would go up front and go, hey, I'm gonna say some stuff right now. It's probably venting. I don't want you to hear this in a way other than how I mean it, but this is in general kind of what I'm feeling, right? And when I do that, it's a little bit easier, I think, to receive that, is to go, listen, I know that you may or may not be the cause of this, but I need to express it. It's important for me to express it. So that's the first thing is, make it more about you and the way you're feeling. Second thing is make sure you set the rules up front about it. And the third thing is sometimes be okay with giving it some distance. Give it some distance, and maybe if you're getting into a place where your emotions are coming out in an accusatory way, be intentional about not talking about your emotions in the moment when you're most emotional. Give it some space. And one of the things that I like to tell people also, because they're like, I've helped people out who are like, well, I'm just protective. Like, I know I sound like a jerk, but I'm just being protective of this boundary or this person or whatever else. And so one of the tools that I try to give them is sometimes if you're in a moment and you feel like you start to feel your defenses rise, you start to feel your hackles rise is I think the word. But you get that prickly feeling in your neck and you're about to shout somebody down. Uh, Ask a question before you make a statement. So if somebody says something and you would normally like respond right back to it, ask the question, did you mean to insult me right there? Was your intention to make me feel bad? Because one of two things will happen. Either they will say yes, and then you can have a fight, and that's fine. That's a moment to have a fight. Or yeah, I mean, or at least you know where that person stands. But if they say no, it's going to bring a different kind of realization than if you just go, hey, you always do this and I hate it when you do this, right? Patch says, I find when I approach these scenarios, it's best to assume the best about the other person, even if they don't necessarily deserve it. Like with Andrew, that's super easy. But at work, it's hard to assume the best about everyone. But when I do the work to adjust my thinking, it makes me a better person and a better communicator. Couldn't have said it better, other than just to reiterate it. I mean, that's exactly it. That's one of the things Patch and I did early on in our relationship is we made this determination that when one of us hurts the other, when one of us does something that's hurtful to the other one, the first assumption we're going to make is that they didn't intend to do it, right? Because when you start from the assumption that the other person didn't intend it, it's easier to give them space and it's easier to be rational about your response to it. So I think that's really, really good advice. I will not try to improve upon that amazing advice. So yeah, so that's kind of my advice on that particular one. And look, I managed it. We still have like 7 minutes left. So there we are. So let's see. So the last question that's on here. Sorry, this is the fun question of the week. I almost missed it. Where has been your favorite place in the world you've ever been, and why? It's a two-part question, but that's the first part. Where has been your favorite place in the world you've ever been? I wonder who asked this question. You've ever been and why? This is a hard one. This is a toss-up. So I've been in the last 4 years. We've been to both Hawaii and we've been to Alaska, and both of those are amazing, beautiful, incredible places. Now, for me, if I'm going to choose one, it's gonna be Hawaii. I think Hawaii is beautiful. I love the climate. I love the islands. I love the ocean is my life. It's not literally my life. I'm not a fisherman yet, but I just love it. I love the Hawaiian Islands. Just absolutely beautiful. So that's probably my favorite place on earth. If you're talking about like a man-made place, it's well, that's a hard too. But we're big Disney fans. We love Disneyland, the original park, down in Anaheim, and the reason that we love it so much is because we love things that are done with intention and things that are done with creativity. And nothing in the world is more intentional and creative than Disneyland. If you've ever been there, it's like a very small park. It does not, but Walt Disney, every part of it was grown from his imagination, was grown just fully formed out of his imagination and by extension the imagination of the people that he worked with. And when you go, everything has a reason, has a purpose. So when the music changes from place to place and when the scenery changes and things, all of it's so intentional and so meaningful. So if it's a man-made place, probably Disneyland. I'm a big Disneyland fan. I'm a sucker for it. What can I say? And then the second question of this is, where would you love to go that you haven't? And the parenthetical is, we know it's the UK. Well, that is one of the places that I would love to go, is the UK, obviously. Such a lovely perspective. Thank you. Obviously, I would love to go to the UK. Much of my family history is from there. My mom's family is from England, Ireland, Scotland, and some Wales. So kind of all over the islands. We're just general islanders on that side of the family. And so there are a lot of places in the UK that I would love to see. Obviously, a lot of lovely friends that I would love to meet in the UK. So that's a huge one. Said mum right too. Thank you. Thank you. I tried. Style, that was just for you. Other places in the world that I would love to go. I really want to go to Japan, to be honest with you. Like Japan is so interesting to me. It's so quite literally foreign. The culture is so different, and there are so many interesting things that I'm intrigued. I want to go to Japan. I want to go to India. I think India is amazing and beautiful, and just this interesting conglomeration of humanity that's there. Of course, I would love to go to the Mediterranean as well and see so much of the ancient history that's there. So there are just tons of places that I would love to go in the world. But of course, we're gonna say the UK because it would make my mom proud, right? So yeah, so that's it. That is it. And that, I think, guys, is it for the day as well. I think I'm going to log off. I'm going to get back to writing my newsletter. Hunter the Monster Historian, how funny. I was just thinking about you the other day. It's good to see you as well. Welcome back in, guys. This is Hunter the Monster Historian. A friend of ours that we met, I was playing, it was one of my Friday Fright streams. I want to go all the places, agreed. And I want to say I was playing like Alien Isolation when Hunter jumped in and told us all about the interesting cryptozoological things that I didn't know about. So welcome back. It's very, very good to see you, Hunter. I'll be live tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific time with our weekly horror stream. So please join us back and hit us with some more facts if you've got them. Hey Ben, welcome in. Good to see you too. Sorry, I'm just logging out. Consider it done deal. Awesome. We'll look forward to seeing you then. But yeah, guys, that's it for this week. So I hope that you got a little bit out of that. I hope there was something that was useful or valuable in some way. If not, I'm sorry, but thanks for keeping me company. Oof, bye, Orf. But that's it, guys. Again, a couple of calls to action, as we call them. Jump over to the YouTube channel. It's at Andrew Burkham on YouTube. Substack, andrewburkham.substack.com. It's a little bite-sized, a little bit of wisdom for you every single week. If you haven't subscribed to that, do. It's free, by the way. It doesn't cost you money. It just is it'll give you a weekly reminder when I post it. And yeah. And that's that. So, and your TikTok. Yes, my Tickety Talk, of course. Amazing stuff. It was so insightful and lovely to have some great perspectives. Thank you. Thank you, Style. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you. And listen, guys, I hope that this is your excuse to get out there and do something that's great this weekend. So, whatever it is you've got lined up, whatever you've got planned this weekend, approach it with intention, approach it with love, approach it with care, and above all, go be great. I'll see you next time.
I've been caught in the whispers, lost in my doubts, tangled in stories I can't live without. But there's a fire, it's burning inside, calling me forward, I can't run and hide. It's not a